In this video we want to talk about desirable business skills. So we're going to look at a range of business skills that are useful, obviously within the business arena, but will also overlap with the type of skills that you need to develop as a student of business. So we're going to look at a wide range of skills, and some of them you can relate to from your own student perspective and adopt some of these skills yourself. I'll indicate as I go through where these are particularly highlighted. So we start by the issue of to identify and develop appropriate skills. Well, the first point we need to make is that work should give some job satisfaction. It should be a situation where workers enjoy what they're doing. Employees like their work. Managers like their work. And that means that there is a social element associated with work, as well as a business stroke economic stroke financial set of implications from work. The social one is we meet as a community. We meet within a certain environment, and we mix within that environment. We build up friendships, and we get to know our colleagues, and there should be some sort of job satisfaction coming back from the whole exercise. It's not simply a question of going to work to earn an income. Now, a lot of what I'm saying here relates to the videos that we've covered, or that you will cover, on the topics of motivation. But the early days of business management saw employees as inputs. They saw them as factors of production. The employees simply facilitated production by performing certain tasks. So they were very similar to the machines that they were working with. Later, more, if you like, enlightened or different views of worker involvements became apparent. And I say became apparent because they were also tested to see if they would lead to increased productivity or less productivity. And these were approaches which dealt with the employees more as humans, more as people, and tried to understand the motivations of people and tried to address those and tried to engage them in the workplace by understanding their motivations. The second point here is that we tend to look for long-term career goals. We like the idea of picking a career that will take us through life, and we will build up expertise and competencies within that particular area, which will enable us to produce an income for ourselves and for our families over a long period of time, ideally a lifetime. So we tend to look for career goals which first of all gives us continuity of employment, but also will give us particular feedback and ways in which we can improve ourselves and improve our career chances over our working lives. For example, feedback from managers about performance. Instead of seeing this as a way of management criticizing us, it could be a way of us seeing that the management are giving us feedback on ways in which we can constructively improve our performance, perhaps by obtaining extra qualifications or by building up particular skill sets. So looking at desirable business skills involves, I think at the start, two basic issues. One is that we should enjoy what we're doing, that will enable us to be more motivated. And secondly, we should have goals. We should have ambitions within the workplace, and we should try to pick out careers and pick out learning ways in which we can improve our learning facilities, learning by observation, learning by instruction, learning by attending courses, learning by speaking to managers and getting criticisms and feedback about our performance. But we learn from all of this, and this will enable us also to progress in our careers. Now, the organization, well, managers have responsibility for the financial well-being of organizations. In a sense, that's what managers do. They look after the welfare, the financial welfare of the organization. If they don't, the organization won't exist. And if it doesn't exist, there won't be work. The need for organization needs to be specified. It's important that we understand that the organization is there perhaps to generate profits for the investors, or the organization is there to meet a particular aspiration from the founders, the aspiration being to supply certain products to certain sectors of the community, perhaps at very cheap prices. So it may not be profit orientated. It may be motivated or orientated towards the achievement of other objectives. But the need for the organization must be that somebody wants the output of the organization. And that want, that need on the part of outside agencies, people, consumers, other organizations, the government, whoever it is, that need is what justifies the existence of the organization. But managers also have to manage the portfolio. They have to look after different aspects of the organization, looking after stockholding and production schedules and staffing rotas, and trying to get a balance between all of them and getting them synchronized and getting them working effectively. That's a big job and a big task for management. There are also current and long-term transactions. The management must ensure that the current transactions are adequately acquitted. In other words, that the current transactions are dealt with. But there are also long-term ones which are in the planning, ones which are just being spoken about, which will arise in the future. And it may be that the managers need to start to factor in the resources and try to plan out how to deal with the problems that may be encountered when these transactions become real, become the center of focus for their activities. It's important that managers understand deadlines and dates. They must work to schedules. They must work to particular dates and deadlines, and they must try to deliver what they promised by certain dates. Otherwise, the whole sequential process of the organization may be disrupted. If one section of the organization is not performing according to what it said, then sections that follow on from that will be disrupted. Sections before it will be disrupted as well, because the whole planning and operational part of the business will be thrown out because one of the particular functions within the business is not working appropriately or as promised. So it's important to meet dates and deadlines that are specified. Now, the tools, well, The tools of management would be to have calendars, making sure that the managers are aware that certain days, certain activities should be complete, or certain tasks should be started, or whatever it is. So it should be calendars, and ideally these calendars should be shared throughout the organization so that the management know exactly what's happening and what's starting. They may not be called calendars, they may be called schedulers, or there may be databases of activities, or there may be particular applications within the local area network, if the company has one, that simply indicate to the management what's happening next and what needs to be done, who's doing what. There could be specialist folders within the computer system where particular documents are stored, and they may be accessed by certain people who have privileges to access those documents. There could be drawings, for example, technical drawings, or there could be past records, or there could be experiences from dealing with certain customers, or whatever it is. But so there may be specialist folders that are also available within the local area network, available on the LAN within the organization. Also, there may be use of day planners, which are very popular. For example, Outlook, Microsoft Outlook will have a planner which will be for the individual, but the individual may be able to share that planner with others, and they can share theirs, and now they can see who's doing what at what time and where they are. It could be color-coded post-it notes and highlighters. It could be as simple as that. It may be just putting up notes and highlighting what's happening for the day and who's doing what and what issues need to be covered on that particular day. So it could be something very basic as paper, color-coded and with highlighters indicating what needs to be done. But as I said, it could be apps and programs that are custom built and used within the organization, perhaps programs written specifically for that organization. Now, good organization shows reliability. The managers are reliable. The organization is reliable. If all the managers are reliable, the organization will be reliable, and that enhances the reputation of the organization. But it's important that the individual managers are reliable. And they're also competent. There's competence. They are competent to do the job. They're capable of doing what they said. They're capable of delivering the output that they have promised. And they're efficient at doing that. They don't waste resources. They don't waste capital or labor or raw materials. They are efficient. They think about what needs to be done and what's the best way to do it. And they learn from their experience. Now, look at the list we've got above and build these skills as a student. These are very useful in all aspects of your working life. As a student, just go back, look at the list that we've got up here. Look at the need for organization, the need to handle a different portfolio of activities, being able to balance that portfolio of activities and achieve the dates that were promised. Go down to the tools, look at the ways in which you can use various facilities to try and help you, and then go down and realize that it's important to have reliability, competence, and efficiency. So these will be things that you can take out as a student and start to apply in all aspects of your study and work life. Now, time management. Well, time management skills show efficiency, focus, and reliability. Because if people have good time management, if they promise to attend a meeting at a certain time, they will be there. If they promise output at a certain time, it will be delivered. But they're able to manage their time in a way that it's broken up, it's allocated, and they know exactly what to do at particular times. They have given themselves certain allocations of time, and they can work within those allocations so as to be efficient and so as to meet their obligations. Workload management depends on diligent time budgeting. So the organization will have a workload, and it's important that the management understand the workload or understand all aspects of the workload and whether the workload can be broken up into smaller units, and then look at how it can be delivered and look at the time scale that has been allocated and see if it's realistic, and only promise what can be done. Prioritize and allocate time blocks. It's important to realize that not all jobs are equal. Some jobs are more important than others, so it's important to bring out the more important ones and make sure that they're completed. These may be the high value jobs or the jobs that are most urgent for whatever reason within the organization. So prioritize. It may be just simply ranking the jobs. The most important jobs are ranked as 5. The next most important jobs are ranked as 4 and 3 and so on. It may be just as simple as that, but it's important to prioritize to make sure that the most pressing jobs, the most urgent jobs are completed first, and that time is allocated accordingly. Work efficiently within the time blocks. Each time block has been worked out specifically to deal with the task that's set. So it's important to work efficiently within that time block. Try to ensure a healthy work-life balance. Everything we say seems like the person is entirely within the organization and is entirely committed to the organization and will spend all his or her time contemplating about how to make the work more efficient and meeting the targets. However, humans need a balance. They need to have a good lifestyle. They need to have health, good sleep. They need to have social contact on the outside. They need to have recreation and enjoy family life and enjoy a sport, perhaps. They need to have a balance, but it's important that the balance is correct. The balance recognizes that when they're at work, they are fully committed. When they're at home, perhaps they have different sets of commitments that they must also achieve. And so their lives are, in a sense, balanced, so that as humans they're able to continue to go. As humans they're able to meet their obligations and fulfill their obligations and not feel stress or feel that they are, in a sense, winding down or becoming more worried and upset and distracted by their obligations, because that will lead to illness and it'll lead to absenteeism and it'll lead to the organization eventually perhaps looking for an alternative employee to fill the task. So work-life balance is very important, and that should be the subject matter of other videos to come later in the course. Adaptability. Well, accountancy is constantly changing in terms of skill requirements, technology, skill requirements in terms of being able to communicate the message with the customer, to be able to meet the requirements of the professional organizations, the statutory obligations as well. The technology of accountancy has changed immensely. It's now much more centered around software usage and the ability to integrate practical knowledge from, or practical data I should say, from organizations into software packages and then refine it into information within the package and interpret it. There are also, of course, legal developments that's always ongoing. So accountancy students in particular, but also all managers within an organization, not just the accountancy, but in particular we're talking about accountancy in this module, but many managers in different departments will also feel the pinch in terms of legal developments. There are constantly developments in terms of health and safety regulations, in terms of employability, in terms of pensions and training and procedures within the workplace to ensure fairness to all the staff, and that the staff are being recognized for their contribution and being dealt with in a fair and equitable manner. So the accountancy bodies are very good at laying out professional standards that the accountants must follow. Accountants who do not follow those professional standards will cease to be accountants. The same happens within the legal profession and the medical profession. So it also happens within many of the other areas of industry, that if managers are not behaving professionally, in other words, they are making arbitrary decisions, or they're making simply wrong decisions, or they're exercising prejudice, or bringing outside values which are not appropriate within business into account, values which are not condoned by the society perhaps. If they're bringing those into the workplace and using them by virtue of their position, that is not professional. Accountants need to constantly update their knowledge and adapt to new challenges. But I keep saying this class is for accountants, but really that applies to all sections of business as well. It applies to the engineers and to the scientists and to the managers and the HR and the marketing and all of the different managers. But accountants are in a very strange position in some respects, because they're the ones who have to present the final accounts, which is the, if you like, the legal status and position of the business as of a particular date, say the 31st of March. So that is the true and fair picture of the business in terms of its assets, its liabilities, and it's what the business represents in financial terms, and it has to do that honestly. So accountants need to keep up to date with all the new changes that are coming in because of computerization, because of perhaps integration of standards between one country and the next, or perhaps in the case of the UK, changes that are being required by the European Union, for example, to bring about greater conformity between standards in one country and the next. Good accountants embrace change and learning opportunities. They develop from challenges and experiences. Again, it applies to all managers and all different disciplines, but accountants do learn from different opportunities. They must look at the situations and contrast the situations with perhaps case studies they've read, keep up to date with the literature that's coming from their professional body, and contrast their own experiences with perhaps what's been written about in that area, and learn from it. So they are constantly developing. Communications. Well, good communication skills are essential, both oral and written. And these applies in all walks of life, not just for accountants or even for managers within the company. These apply to everybody. But in accountancy and business, good communication skills promote career advancement and more efficient working. It's certainly the case that if someone is inarticulate, they're not going to be promoted. They're not going to climb high up the ladder, the career ladder, because they can't express themselves or they can't write properly. These are fundamental skills, and accountants know full well that if they're going to progress up the career ladder, they must have good communication skills. But having said that, as I said, it applies to all the managers within industry, not just the accountants, but it applies to everyone. But good communications leads not just to good career advancement, but also more efficient working. The message gets across in a clear fashion, and people understood what's been said, they understood what's been asked of them, so there's a clarity about clear communications. Clear and clarity. So, good communication skills help gain good employment. So it's very important that students have got good qualifications in English, understand rules of syntax and grammar and how to write and how to present knowledge and how to do good presentations. These are all good communication skills. But good communications also facilitates good teamworking, because teamworking relies on communications. People must talk to each other and look at the issues, look at the problems and try to resolve the problems. And they're doing this through communications. But it also promotes the image of the business. If the business is sending out letters to their customers that are badly composed with poor spellings and poor grammar, it doesn't look professional. It'll damage the image of the business. It enables smooth client contact and interaction. So being able to write properly and communicate with clients enables a better quality contact, and the clients will have more confidence in the organization as a consequence. It demonstrates good interpersonal and networking skills. Having good communication skills means that people are able to link to each other better. They have clear understanding of what they're saying and what they want and what they're suggesting. They get to know each other better. They have the same types of backgrounds and knowledge and ways of communicating, so they understand. So it leads to better networking skills, better interpersonal skills. It's important, therefore, as students that you ensure that your non-verbal communications are appropriate. Not just your verbal communications in terms of your written work or your spoken messages, but your personality should be helpful and supportive. People should have confidence in you as well and trust you, and they trust you by looking at your actions and look at the way you behave. And if you are helpful and supportive, they will want to know you. They will want to like you, and they'll want you on their team. It's important not to gossip. It's important not to use office time to sit criticizing colleagues or criticizing the management or the processes. It's important to be constructive and to avoid critical comments, and don't engage in gossip. It doesn't lead to anything except bad will. It leads to criticisms. It leads to alienation of certain parts of the colleague, your colleagues. The colleagues want to disassociate themselves from those comments, perhaps. So it leads to factions developing, and pro and against, people for and against. The pro and anti groups are formed because of perhaps gossip. So it's not a useful thing to engage in. It's important that your dress code and appearance and posture are appropriate. The managers represent the business, and they must be respected by their colleagues, they must be respected by senior management, and they must be respected by line management and the employees in general. So the dress code is important. It's important to ensure that the appearance of the person, not just the way they speak and the way they present themselves, is good, but their appearance must be good in the sense that they have made an effort to represent the business in a professional way. So they dress appropriately. This happens in all sorts of areas. People do not turn up to work dressed in, if they're working in senior management position, they don't turn up dressed in shabby clothes, because the position requires a certain amount of respect. Policemen dress with a uniform, so we know that they are policemen. They have got a certain authority. Some policemen are more senior than others, so they wear insignia to say that they are. The same within the military forces. Undertakers dress appropriately for what they do. It cuts right across society, so it's important that we subscribe to that, and that it doesn't take a lot of effort, but it should be factored in, that dress code, posture, and just general appearance is appropriate for the tasks that the person is undertaking. It's important to have good manners. It's important to understand etiquette. It's important to understand how to eat, how to handle a knife and fork, or how to handle chopsticks, or whatever. It's important to understand not to abuse substances and not to drink excessively. It's important to understand that in business meetings, or if it's a business luncheon, that a certain code of behaviour is required. So manners should be understood. There should be care to other people's feelings and their position. The more that individuals demonstrate their manners, the more respect that they will get. And thereby, of course, the more respect that their organisation will get. It's also important to speak clearly with good articulation and never use offensive or bad language. It's very important to be able to speak clearly and have good diction and good grammar to ensure that the message gets across clearly. There's no ambiguity. Try to avoid jokes and smart comments. Some of these may be offensive. Perhaps the person making those comments hasn't thought about it very carefully. And even though it may not offend anyone in the room, it may offend some members of their family. So always avoid making offensive or comments which could be interpreted badly by some people. And certainly avoid bad language. Swearing and using profanities is not required. It's not ever condoned, and it's not ever acceptable. There's no need for it. It's a sign of, if anything, it's a sign of bad communication skills. Not having sufficient language skills. So people resort to that sort of language. So it's very important to bear that in mind. Openness. Well, honesty and integrity are highly valued in the business world. Accountants pride themselves on adhering to the strictest ethical standards. This promotes trust. So accountants are monitored by their professional bodies, by the accountancy bodies. They also, in a sense, self-monitor. They watch themselves. They know what's required of them. And if they're acting properly, it promotes trust in them. It promotes trust in the business for whom they work. But the standards that they are upholding are standards that represent the highest ethical positions. They're not out to cheat or lie or trick anybody. They're acting honestly and openly. They are reporting the facts and interpreting the facts. So it promotes trust. Being transparent when making decisions and giving advice has the added benefit of improving working relationships. It will make teamwork easier and will help you to foster an environment that is respectful and collaborative. So it's very important to portray honesty and openness and fairness. And this will enable others to relate to that person and trust that person and trust the organization for whom the person works. And it'll also enable people to work in teams because there's trust within the team. They understand that the team has got a particular task to complete, but now they understand that the members of the team are trustworthy. They don't cheat or lie or gossip or whatever. They just simply apply themselves to completing the task. And that will make teamwork easier. And there will be much more respect and collaboration within the organization and much more efficiency and productivity as a consequence. Any act of decision making should provoke a consideration of ensuing consequences. So when people have to make decisions, foremost in their minds should be what's going to be the consequence of this decision. What will happen as a consequence of making this particular decision? And if it adversely affects some people, perhaps the decision would want to be revisited and perhaps modified. So it's important to look at the consequences of decisions and trace through the implications of decisions to see who is affected adversely and what can be done about that. Because ideally, decisions should not adversely affect people. Ideally. We know that in business, many decisions adversely affect people. Prices have to be increased, people are adversely affected. Companies have to close down particular plants, so workers have to be made redundant. People are affected adversely. But ideally, if possible, when making the decisions, try to trace through the implications to see if anything can be done at that early stage to ameliorate the bad effects, the negative effects of the decision. Leadership. Well, leadership involves confidence. Leaders tend to be confident. If they're not confident, if they're very diffident or very reluctant, nobody will want to follow them because they seem unsure of what they're doing. So they have a great deal of confidence. They're also quite patient. They know when to move. They know how to get the job done. Their timing is very good. They tend to know how to motivate people, but also when to engage that motivation, when to get the whole project started. They don't rush into a particular project, nor do they leave it too long. They know the timing, so they're patient. They can delegate. They understand that their position may require delegations. It might be a large organization, a large project, a large team. They can't relate to all the members of the team. If there are 100 people in the team, the leader can't talk to each of them separately every day and deal with different issues raised from each of them. So the chances are they will have some sort of hierarchical structure. There will be the leader, there will be senior people within that, and then there will be the employees. So good leaders can delegate. But they can also mentor and teach. They know that they need good managers with them who exhibit good leadership skills. But sometimes people only have good leadership skills because they've been mentored, they've been trained to have these leadership skills. So it's important for the leader to be able to mentor people who are next in line. And they may do this by working with them, having them with them all the time and working as a team, a small team, perhaps 2 or 3, the overall leader and perhaps 2 others or 1 other, and they will then learn what the leader is thinking and doing and why they've made particular decisions. They tend to be approachable and makes himself or herself available. Leaders should not be aloof. And there should be a feeling throughout the organization that the leader can be contacted. That it is possible to make contact and have a meeting with the leader if need be. And that will lead to more cohesion within the organization. The organization will be more bound together because there's more trust in the leader. They're also responsible. They are people who will make good decisions and they will take responsibility for their decisions. If the decision goes wrong, they will still take the responsibility. They will own up bad decision. So they're responsible for the assets of the business and for the success of the different projects, but they are responsible in the sense that they will accept that responsibility. They don't try to blame someone else. They're team members. They can work as a team and they can work within teams. They can deal with others and they can relate to others and empathize, but at the same time try to move the team in a particular direction. They can nudge them along by making good arguments and good points and trying to encourage people to move in a certain direction. So they will work within teams and they can be quite good as members of teams. They tend to engage in strategic thinking, long-term planning. The leaders understand that the organization will have short-term rules and regulations and procedures. And if these are working, then the leader, the chances are, will leave those because they're working. But the leader will be concerned about the future, where the organization will be in 5 or 10 years' time. Look at the long-term planning. Look at technological change and look at what's happening to the organization over time. So the leader may want to engage in this type of strategic thinking and then try to nudge the organization down a slightly different path, so it will capitalize on technological advancements, it will change the product range, it will change its ways of working. It may take a long time to do this, but at least the organization is orientating itself towards what's required in the future. So it's not sticking to one position. The organization is becoming flexible. Leaders tend to be quite visionary. I think we have to be careful with this word at the same time, because it may overlap with our understanding of entrepreneurial. But leaders tend to be visionary. They tend to look at problems and try to imagine what the solutions are and the ways round the particular problem. Where entrepreneurs, of course, are looking for gaps in the market and looking for areas where the organization can move in to do something different, or change the way it works, or reinvent itself, in other words. But the visionary person we're talking about under leadership may be someone who just thinks about particular issues, thinks about particular problems, and tries to imagine what the solutions can be, and having selected perhaps a small number of possible solutions, will then discuss these with other colleagues and get criticisms and feedback, and eventually refine their decision making through this, if you like, visionary process, this imaginary process, until finally there is an agreement that the optimum course is in a particular direction. And that may be the product of this type of visionary thinking. They're also quite creative, and again we have to be careful here about overlap with entrepreneurship. But they are creative in the sense that they can problem solve. They can problem solve generally quite efficiently. They can see solutions perhaps that others didn't see. They can use existing resources in innovative ways. So they're quite creative, and they're able to solve problems very rapidly. Now, a useful activity would be to research articles on prominent leaders in history and try to determine why they were so effective as leaders. It's a big task, that one, but a very useful one. It's always worthwhile giving yourself a task at the end of a session such as this. So go online and pick someone big and interesting and see why were they so effective as leaders. This could be a political leader, someone who was able to lead the people, but at the same time was flexible and was able to accommodate different opinions and was able to move in particular directions. It could be an industrialist, someone who took a company that was failing and turned it around. It could be an entrepreneur who was also seen as a leader. It could be Steve Jobs from Apple, who enjoys an immense reputation for his innovative work. It could be Bill Gates from Microsoft, who to a large extent is responsible for changing the world. Well, that seems like a very grandiose thing to say, but without him and Steve Jobs and all the others, we would not have computers in the format we have today. We may not be as advanced as we are today. So it'd be worthwhile going back and preparing your own little case study of these people and having it on file so that you have a reference point when it comes to discussing the creative, the visionary, the entrepreneurial, the leadership styles that may be followed. So that's really all we need to do in this session. It's a relatively long session, but it covers a lot of topics associated with issues in business and the types of skills that the business community must have to resolve those issues. It's an important class because it contains so many important issues, and it's worth going back and making your own notes from each of these headings that I presented throughout the session. But that's all we're going to deal with here, so let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.